We are going to move here to a topic of, at one point, great discussion in the United States. Let's fade it a little bit. The January 6th attacks and their aftermath. Here we are, 2024, Biden versus Trump yet again. As we discuss some of the ripple effects here and, historical memory of this event, very, very honored to be joined by Brian Becker, who is the National Director of the Answer Coalition and also the host of the Socialist program, which airs here on Breakthrough News Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern. Yesterday's episode with Mohammed Morandi, fantastic stuff. Please check that out on our YouTube page where you already are. But Brian, thanks so much for being back with us.
Great to be here. Great to be with both of you. Thanks so much.
Well, I wanted to have this conversation. I know many of us probably are trying to forget January 6th, but I mean, here we are with a similar lineup of presidential candidates, it seems, at least from the two major parties, and many of the same issues, of course, because of Trump's litigation, still in the dock. And so I guess here's the first question I wanted to put to you here in framing this is, so much of what we hear about January 6th is the basis for why there is a push to vote for anyone other than Trump. That Trump is such a unique threat to democracy, and you can see it here because he tried to steal the election, that everything else goes to the wayside. I guess, how do you see the usage and abuses of January 6th in that regard going into this election season?
Well, I wouldn't downplay the fact that Donald Trump does constitute a right-wing threat to democracy or bourgeois democracy or the existing tortured form of democracy that does exist. In other words, Trump really is a threat. You could see that his effort, obviously, to overturn the outcome of a democratic election, however skewed it is, he lost the election. He lost by 7 million votes. He lost the Electoral College by 306 to 232. It wasn't even actually a close election. It was close in some states, some so-called battleground states, but he lost, and yet he did everything, including the use of large-scale amounts of violence and intrigue and conspiracy with others within the Trump section of the American capitalist establishment to overturn an election. So that's only part of it. Trump was also, as you remember, in the days right after the George Floyd killing, was demanding the use of the Insurrection Act so that the U.S. military could be deployed against Black people in America, and not just Black people, anybody engaged in dissent. So Trump is a threat to democracy. Knowing all that, we then have to say, why is the Democratic Party again picking the one candidate who will certainly or almost certainly lose to Donald Trump, and that would be Joe Biden, just as Hillary Clinton was almost the only candidate from the Democratic Party establishment who could have been defeated by Donald Trump in 2016. They picked her, and she was defeated. And again, let's just remind the audience, the Democrats didn't accept the outcome of that election. They said that election, too, was stolen. The Kremlin and Vladimir Putin, using this immense power from the so-called Internet Research Agency, skewed the election and stole it from the Democrats. That was nonsense. So we have a situation where, Trump is a threat to democracy. I think it's real. I think people should not take it lightly. But the Democrats have done everything to facilitate the comeback of Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump could have been arrested shortly after January 6th and charged with sedition. He was at his lowest ebb. And instead, the Democrats, focused on a ridiculous impeachment trial on the moment that he was leaving office, so it looked like political theater, and thus was able to be used by Trump to say to his supporters, look, this is purely politics, because the Democrats did something that was purely political, theatrical, an impeachment case. But he could have been arrested. But here we are, Eugene and Rania, in 2024, 3 years later, who's in jail? Who's gone to jail? Most of the people who have been sentenced to jail were basically small-time participants. Many of them actually just went into the Capitol building that day. Yes, the fascist element, the Oath Keepers, the Three Percenters, the Proud Boys, the fighting force, the fascist element of the Trump movement, of the MAGA movement, they have been sort of taken to jail. The capitalist establishment is making it clear that fascist street fighters are not going to dominate over the other parts of the bourgeoisie at this moment. But in large measure, Trump has been helped by every step the Democrats have taken. He has been rehabilitated based on the spinelessness, the insipidness of the Democratic Party, its stupidity in terms of how to deal with Trump, and most importantly, Biden, who had control of the House, control of the Senate, and the White House, could have done things that were meaningful for working class people, really meaningful, including people who voted for Donald Trump. And the Democrats on all levels failed. And as a matter of fact, it was under the Democratic Party watch, when they had control of all branches of government except the Supreme Court, that women lost the right to control their own bodies and have abortions if they so chose. So the Democrats on all levels have failed to stop what is, in fact, a real threat to democracy.
It's amazing. And while failing to stop that, they've also facilitated a genocide, which they're more invested in facilitating Israel's genocide in Gaza than they are preventing the return of Trump, because that's what it looks like we're really dealing with later down the line when we have an election this year. But one aspect of this well, I'll put it this way. I think the way that January 6th was covered, it was taken seriously by the media. It was taken seriously by the Democratic Party in the way they talked about what a threat it posed, and even some Republicans who were against it. That said, it was also kind of framed as something very clownish that happened spur of the moment. The level of organizational capacity that went into it, and then also the sort of the way the security forces, whether it's the police or the military, sort of let it happen, didn't get as much attention as it deserved. And it seems like those aspects of this remain threats, on top of course, the return of a figure like Donald Trump. But Brian, what do you have to say about those elements I just mentioned?
Yeah, exactly. It's so important what you're mentioning, Rania, because the Democrats also focused in the House Select Committee that investigated January 6th. And what was noticeable was they only paid tribute to the police. They only paid tribute to the officers under uniform, either the military or the police, when there was obviously a conspiracy. I mean, why was the National Guard not called out? Why were the police agencies told to step down? Why was there such a light police presence? I mean, the FBI had intelligence reports and was reporting to all of the different entities that there was going to be basically a mass armed demonstration engaged with and inspired by the president, who told them, don't be weak, you have to fight like hell. They were coming with firearms to the Capitol at the moment the government was going to certify, and they were allowed to take over the Capitol. And the January 6th House Committee did nothing to talk about the complicity of police forces and military forces as part of this conspiracy. Only that the right wing treated the police badly. Only that the right wing was mean to the police. Only that the right wing dishonored the police. But frankly, Eugene and I marched on the Capitol with a similar sized group on September 15, 2007. We were protesting against the surge, the so-called surge, where Bush was sending more troops to Iraq. Just like the January 6th demonstrators, we gathered by the White House. 100,000 of us marched to the west side of the Capitol. We were led by Iraq anti-war veterans. Some of them had just come from the battlefield, but they were against the war. We came and we said we want to deliver a letter to Congress saying, don't go along with Bush on the surge. And the police were there in riot gear. They attacked us. They tear gassed us. They pepper sprayed us. They beat us. They mass arrested us. Nobody could even get close to the Capitol building. And that was a peaceful demonstration. But here you had on January 6th, 2021, tens of thousands of people coming with guns saying that we're going to stop the election from being certified. And the Capitol Police are there without riot gear. That, by the way, when the attack suddenly sort of stopped or when they started to retreat, it's when Ashley Babbitt, that one woman who was the first into the speaker's lobby where the Congress people were, hiding under their chairs, and the demonstrators were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence." And she came through the window. She was the first one, and they shot and killed her, because if she had gotten through, probably many of those Congress people would have been either badly injured or killed. So the Capitol Police, or a Capitol Police officer, finally shot her. and the crowd started to retreat, they were escorted out of the building by the Capitol Police. The Capitol Police, if you remember, they were holding their hands. They were saying, we're going to help you get out of this safely. And at the same time, Donald Trump, while this is happening, is calling Republican members of Congress saying, don't certify, don't certify. It's obviously an orchestrated event. Is there a clown show? There's a clown show in every insurrection. Every revolution has people on the fringes. Every counter-revolution has clownish characters and clownish figures. Were there people there who weren't planning to be involved in an insurrection, just there because they love Trump? Yes, they were there too. But that does not mitigate or deny the fact that there was a high-level effort to overturn the election, and the Capitol Police, or elements of them, and the Pentagon and the National Guard, coordinating with the U.S. Department of Justice and the Secretary of Defense at that time, who were Trump appointees, made that crowd available to take over the Capitol building. And the fact that the Congress could be dispersed, and then hours later, half of the Republicans still came back after they ran for their lives and voted not to certify, when obviously Biden had won 7 million in the popular vote and the Electoral College was not close. This shows the level of complicity, and it also shows the level of destabilization within the American capitalist establishment, where both sides are willing to go to war against each other. And so we see the undoing of the empire. The undoing of the empire. There's not the first time elections have been stolen. Al Gore, his election in 2000 was stolen, but Gore played by the rules. And he made sure the Black Congressional Caucus did not get a hearing when they said, don't certify this obviously racist stolen election in 2000. Gore said, no, for the sanctity of U.S. imperialism, the empire, the peaceful transition to power, all of the things that institutionalize American stability, he said that comes first. But Trump said no to that. And that was a cardinal sin for a capitalist politician, but it represents and reflects a profound destabilization of U.S. imperialism at a moment, as you're saying, Rania, where their main priority now is to wipe out the Palestinian people, to wipe out the resistance forces in Ukraine who didn't want to have Ukraine become a colonial puppet of NATO. They're mainly committed, the Democrats are mainly committed to imperialist war. That comes first and foremost for them. That's why I say, and I think a lot of other people, and I'm supporting the Claudia de la Cruz, Karina Garcia campaign, but there are other third-party campaigns. Don't vote for the Democrats. Don't vote for Genocide Joe. Don't vote for the Republicans. We need a mass, independent, grassroots, and I would say socialist alternative that's genuine and real, because the two capitalist parties are driving the country into the ground.
Mm-hmm. No, very well taken points. And, if one of these alternative choices was to win, they have to investigate this Capitol Police thing. Over 1 million posts in the weeks leading up to January 20th on social media saying that people were saying that they were going to storm the Capitol. Not that they wanted to. Over 1 million posts saying this is our plan to storm the Capitol. They have an intelligence report from the Capitol Police themselves that said the Capitol itself is likely to be targeted. And yet and still, they said they only prepared for quote unquote First Amendment activity. And even some of the preparations they made with riot gear and things like that, they told people to deploy without them. You mentioned September 15th, 2007. It's hard to explain to anyone who has never led a protest around the Capitol. I've been at protests of like 50 people at the Capitol where there's an army surrounding it. So there's something that smells still on that one, but of course wasn't looked into by Liz Cheney and those folks. But nonetheless, Brian Becker, host of the Socialist program, national director of the Answer Coalition. Again, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, Wednesdays, Breakthrough News. On this YouTube page you are on right now, you can see the Socialist program every week. Brian, thanks so much for giving us some of your time.
Thank you so much.